Okay, everybody, welcome to episode number 49 of Sports Cards Live. I'm so excited for this episode. It's been a long time in the making. Before we get on with it, I do want to thank last Saturday's guest, Eric Norton of Beckett Live Presents. We talked about a bunch of things, but the highlight might have been how challenging it is to price all the cards and be a price guide analyst, among many other topics. And then on After Hours, I had with me Amit Acharya, a good friend of mine, and among many topics. And that episode really got going in the second half, but we had a great discussion about rookie cards and really what constitutes a rookie cards. Are the definitions of a rookie card, are they starting to fade? Is the hobby moving on with new sort of definition? And that sort of thing. Really interesting discussion. Also want to thank last Wednesday's guest, Adam, the Real 27 guy. He has started to issue a new basketball card magazine called Basketball Card Fanatic, available by email. Here it is. I printed off my copy, and a really nice magazine with lots of good articles. I recommend you checking that out. You can ping him on Instagram at the Real 27 guy. Later tonight, Colin Murray will be joining me for After Hours. This coming Wednesday on Sports Cards Live, my guest will be Jordan Hagedorn. Jordan Hagedorn has a podcast called For the Hobby. He's an NFL agent and a Brett Favre super collector, so that should be pretty awesome. That will also be episode number 50 of Sports Cards Live, so looking forward to that one. And then next Saturday, one of my favorite YouTube shows, Jake Roy of 90s B-Ball Cards will be joining me, so that'll be a lot of fun. A couple quick announcements, guys. Sports Cards Live, all the old episodes, every episode in the library is now available on podcast. And I do want to thank tonight's guest, John Newman, for pointing me in the direction of Anchor.fm. And it's pretty awesome. They've all been uploaded. It took me a couple days, but they're all there now. They'll be on Apple within a couple weeks, but it's on Spotify and a whole bunch of other podcasting platforms. So if you want to check those out, you can now do that. Also want to let everybody know I've changed my Instagram handle to tie into the show. It used to be at jlee_cards. It's now at jlee_sports cards live. Just wanted to get that cross branding happening. So I'm going to be showing on After Hours tonight some cool show and tell items, some cards, as well as a couple of other historical or hobby historical items that I've picked up recently. So you might want to check that out. Tonight at the end of the episode, I will be showing my card of the day, or maybe cards of the day, which will tie into my guest tonight, John Newman. I want to thank all the subscribers we have so far. Everybody watching, thank you so much for helping keep the show going. I am still loving doing this. It's a ton of fun meeting a ton of great people and lots of great viewers. So thank you all. Thank you for your interactions, and looking forward to your questions and comments tonight as usual. If you are new to the show, I want to thank John for kind of advertising who's going to be on and attracting some more viewers to the show. So thank you to you guys for coming by. If you haven't yet subscribed to Sports Cards Live on YouTube, please go ahead and do that. Hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment, all those things that help the algorithm and whatever that ends up meaning, it means. I don't even really know. Okay, let's get to tonight's guest. I see we have lots of comments coming in already. We'll get to those shortly. So tonight's guest and I, we actually have a few things in common. We both started in the hobby kind of in 1979 at 7 years old. Puts us at the same age. This guy, John, he pulled his favorite player, Reggie Jackson, in his first pack of cards with his grandfather. He started his hobby career at 15 years old at Rudy's Card Shop, went on to open up his own store in 1992, had the store for 4 years. He moved his side hustle to online and card shows after that. He was inspired by Eric Norton of Beckett Live Presents and encouraged by his son to share his knowledge and experience in podcast format. And in November 2018, Sports Card Nation was born. He's prospected in baseball. He loves his football. He's a diehard New York Rangers fan. Originally from Brooklyn, New York, now hailing from Syracuse. Let's bring him out. Lifelong hobbyist and good guy, John Newman. John, welcome to episode 49 of Sports Cards Live. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Good. Wow, what an intro, man. I don't know what I owe you for that, but I'll have my checkbook filled out here shortly. And you know, it's great. You had Eric on last Saturday. I know Eric very well. I roomed with him at the last Toronto Expo that actually took place in person. And that's a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best.
Awesome, man. Well, you don't owe me anything, but I'll send you my address if you want to send a check my way. I'll open up a US dollar account. We'll be just fine. We'll be just fine. All right, man. Listen, let's jump right into it. So you are a guy who sells cards. That's what you do. It's your thing. You've been doing it for a long time. We're in a crazy time right now with the pandemic. In the middle of March, we started to get an understanding of what was about to happen to the world and how that might impact our hobby. None of us knew how it would. I want to know, when you started to get the feeling that things were something was happening, something was gonna change, how did you brace for the pandemic at that time? What did you do to set yourself up, or what did you think was gonna happen?
Well, what I thought was going to happen, Jeremy, is sales slow down, people not knowing how long they would be out of work, people not knowing how unemployment would work being out of work. And so I thought cards, memorabilia would sort of be an afterthought or on the back burner for those that were worried. I think everyone was worried. I mean, whether you own your own business, even if you're not an employee of someone else and you own your own business, with quarantines, people are not out and about and traveling and stimulating the economy. And so I think everybody initially was, whether it's sports cards or not sports cards, kind of bracing for a decline as far as sales and economy goes. And as you already know, and everyone else probably listening, that's the exact opposite happened. And I'm surprised there's probably a lot of people, and anyone that says they knew this was exactly going to happen, I'll say it. I really don't believe that. I mean, they might not have been as bracing for impact as I was, let's say, but I don't think anyone could see 2020 being probably one of the biggest hobby years, period. Forget pandemic or no pandemic.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I remember back in the middle of March, I had recently, you knew something was about to happen. I thought, oh my gosh, people are going to start selling cards. They're going to be scrambling for cash. And earlier in the year, I picked up a few cards, put some money into some cards, and I started thinking to myself, there's going to be a scramble to sell now. Am I going to get stuff out there in time? And do I want to sell? Maybe sell now and buy back later. Well, boy, am I glad that I was kind of too lazy to sell anything and held on to most. So like yourself, pleasantly surprised with how things went versus, the poop hitting the fan sort of thing. So yeah. Interesting times we're in. Why don't you let us know a little bit about kind of what your approach is within the hobby? What do you do specifically in the hobby, John?
I'm heavy baseball, football. I do some hockey, not as much as I probably should. Basketball definitely is up there. I've gotten sort of more into basketball the last few years, probably because, let's be real, it's really picked up in the last few years, especially. Love grading. We could go into that later on too, but I did a 180 from my original opinion when grading first hit the scene many moons ago to where I am now, which is it's a big part of what I do, submitting, selling, acquiring stuff with grading at the forefront of my mind. And, I know I'm talking to you off the air, whether someone likes grading or doesn't like grading, even those that don't like it know that what a big part of the hobby it honestly is. Now they may not buy any or submit any, but to ignore the fact that it's a huge part of the industry would be disingenuous.
For sure. And we will talk more about grading later. I do want to kind of, pick your brain for some of that grading experience and help the viewers understand maybe a few of the ins and outs, do's and don'ts, some of this sort of insights you've gleaned over the years in terms of your grading experience. That's awesome, man. But before we get into grading, I do want to talk. I want to, state of the hobby is such an interesting topic right now. We've got a few sort of subtopics I want to touch on. We're going to get to that. First, let's say hi to the viewers we have. See who's out there. We've got Legion in the house. Legion, welcome to the show. As always, Dave Jones. I'm ready too, man. Ready for a great episode tonight. Thanks for joining us. Ernie Rondo, welcome to you as always. Charles, great to have you. Charles is a young guy he's like a 15-year-old vintage hockey collector, a real guy who represents the future of the hobby. Paul Cashman, welcome and good evening to you. Yamwax, as always, welcome to you. Vic Prod, can you give tips of new people that wants to collect basketball cards, please? Keep watching. We might get into a bit of that, Vic, and thank you for joining. Bobby Burrell says, and don't forget to stamp that like button. Yeah, please do. Please do. Thank you, Bobby. Charles, anyone who is new, welcome to the Greatest Hobby Show. Thank you, Charles. SCA Sports Cards, great to have John on the show. One of my favorite YouTubers. There you go. And let me just switch up the ticker right now. Guys, right there on the bottom, John's YouTube shows include Hobby Hotline and Roughing the Passer. I do believe Roughing the Passer airs on the Hobby Hotline channel. Is that right, John?
No, it usually it's either mine or Drew Herndon, who's going to be, I see, coming up on your show. A little shameless plug there on his StreamYard.
Okay.
So I think it's under the Hobby Roundup, which is sort of his social media.
Okay. So if you guys, if you want to find John and Drew for that matter on YouTube, I recommend you just type in Hobby Hotline. You'll find their channel, subscribe. They do a Saturday morning panel discussion with live call-ins. It's awesome. I watched it this morning. I called in last week. It's a fun show. Paul Cashman says 2-1 Tampa Bay. Is that still current? I'd love to know. I can't believe I'm missing what could be the last period of hockey this season, but anyway, we'll do it. We got to keep on the schedule here. Rich Klein, who is on Hobby Hotline as well, and a previous guest of Sports Cards Live, says, I just want to see if John can take Sports Cards Live off the air, which he did this morning on Hobby Hotline. We'll get to that.
I'm pleading innocent. I didn't touch. My hands were right here, Rich. I'm just telling you. I don't know what happened there.
In case you're wondering what we're talking about, this morning on Hobby Hotline, the show just went dark all of a sudden, and no one knows what happened, but they got it back. They recovered nicely, and it was a great episode. I watched it and really enjoyed it. Dustin, the Personal Finance Dad, good evening to you guys. Dustin has a YouTube channel, The Personal Finance Dad. It's a sports card channel more than it's a personal finance channel, but check that out. Card Killer in the house. Welcome to you.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Thank you for joining. Jeff McMahon, hello to you. Colin Murray, who will be, says hi there. He's also known as Sloth55, and he will be joining me on After Hours tonight. Ralphie in the house. Say word to Big Bird. 3B Collection. What's up, John? Welcome to the show, 3B. And Paul Cashman likes to call Rich Klein the loquacious Rich Klein. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're going to get into some state of the hobby stuff right now, but I want to start because, John and I, we did chat yesterday, and we had a good discussion, and he kind of, he enlightened me into some of his experience and his observations that he's had over the course of his experience in the hobby. And one thing we were chatting about was just how much things have changed between how hobbyists approach modern day players today versus how hobbyists approached modern day players, as recently as, I don't know, maybe the last decade, but especially in the, 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s. And what I'm talking about is, how back then a player had to prove himself. Nowadays, a player it seems like the hobby considers that the player has proved himself with one game. John, can you speak to that and how that has evolved over the years?
It's amazing where we are. It's like day trading. It's like a stock just has to have one good night and everyone's buying in. Like you said in the intro, we both started around 1979, and obviously in our teenage years in the early 90s, late 80s. Even if I don't care what sport it was, if a player scored 2 goals or hit 2 home runs or scored 2 touchdowns, people took notice. But they're like, I want to see that tomorrow, or in football, I want to see that next week again before they really put their eggs in that basket. But where we are now with the hobby is like any athlete does that in their respective sport one night, like you said, and it's a mad dash. It's a mad dash on both ends. It's a mad dash for buyers to get to these selling platforms, the ComCs, the Star Stocks, the Sport Lots, and even the sellers to get there and kind of bump the prices up or pull them off even and not sell them right away. And then list them higher. And we can talk. You see what's happened on eBay with that stuff is a a seller will, they didn't get there in time, and someone goes and buys it now at a lower price than what the market now is bringing, and then the seller says he can't find the card, or it's after looking at it, it's damaged, and obviously he could be telling the truth, but in reality, definitely sort of suspicious, and it's become day trading. A lot of people like to blame like some of the new influx of hobbyists in the hobby. I'm sure that's a factor, no doubt. To say otherwise, again, is probably not being truthful. But I don't even think it's just that niche. I think it's just in general. With the pandemic, I think you going back to the pandemic, Jeremy, you got more people at home to jump on, eBay and the ComCs during work hours. Let's say when normally maybe they'd be at work and get in trouble, let's say, if they were caught doing that. And so I think all the ingredients are there for the day trading aspect to really take a foothold now compared to years before. And it's a phenomenon, for quite frankly. That's the word that just comes to mind is, you look at a perfect example of this phenomenon, as I just coined it, is Bo from, the NBA. He had a crazy great scrimmage game, a meaningless game, no offense to him, but it's just a practice game. And, he played very well, credit to Bo. And then people just went nuts, raising prices, buying them at the higher levels. And then the regular season games that counted resumed. And that didn't translate into those games. And, and that's, again, you got that 180-day cancellation policy. I know a lot of people like reverse transactions, said the card wasn't as described. I mean, it's just, I can go off on that policy. I won't, but I think you get the gist of where I feel about that. And it's just crazy, as the old man in the porch as I am, coming from the old days to see where we are today.
Yeah, you mentioned the Bowl, and the most recent one would be Tyler Hero of the Miami Heat, who had that 37-point game. The youngest player off the bench to score that many points at the age of 20, something like that. Pretty impressive. And all of a sudden, his cards have taken off, which is it's normal for today's market. But the one thing I wonder about him is he was a big prospect, a very confident young man. He's a great shooter. I wonder if he is the real deal, if he will have a great career, of course, barring any career-ending injuries and that kind of thing. Is he poised to have a great career, and will the value of his cards as they stand today, will that hold up, and will that value still be there down the road? I don't think we can answer that. It's more of a rhetorical question, but it's an interesting thought experiment to go down, similar to the Bowl thing, and just really wondering if these can sustain. But you mentioned one thing that I thought is very true, in that a lot of people have a lot more time right now on their hands, and more money, of course, because you're not traveling, you're not going out to the pub and having drinks and watching sporting events, and you're certainly not gambling. So interesting stuff there. But as far as day trading, John, we know what's happening. We know there's a lot of people who are out there trying to capitalize quickly. What I want to hear your opinion on is it good or bad, or a bit of both, for the hobby?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I think it's good because any business, if you're having transactions take place, that's a good thing. That means there's money flowing in to the business, to the hobby, to the industry. I think it's bad because it probably turns certain people off that don't like that, or sort of, I'm old school, but I'm also adapt to my environment. And so it doesn't really bother me. Maybe in the same vein, it might bother someone else who doesn't really want to adapt as much as I don't mind. And, that's another issue, is we got a lot of, with new folks coming in, some of the people that have been here already are not really welcoming. But I think it's good and bad. I guess it depends on the person, but I'm a firm believer if transactions are happening, sales and buys and sales are going down, that's that's a good thing. I think we have to worry when there's less transactions taking place. Then that's thoughts for concern there.
That makes a lot of sense. I like what you said, is that, this is happening. I'm in the hobby. I've been in the hobby for 40 years type of thing. I'm going to adapt to whatever is happening. And I love that, John, because that's exactly my position as well. And you also mentioned a lot of the old school, a lot of the old guard may not be as welcoming to some of these new entrants into the hobby. I still consider them hobbyists. They might be fleeting, but they're still hobbyists for the time that they're here. And the fact that they're in here day trading, at least we know what's happening. We can see it and we can adapt accordingly, decide to partake in it or not. You don't have to change your approach, your collecting approach, but maybe you tweak it a little bit to maybe let them get through their cycles of trading before you're going to pick up that player, because prices get run up and that sort of thing. So who knows? But I like that. And I also think that as hobby veterans, people who've been in the hobby as long as you have, as long as I have, and guys that have been in it even longer than us, or shorter for that matter, let's not chase away anybody new, because even though you've got, say, thousands of new people in the hobby right now because of some of the reach of influencers, like, the one everyone likes to talk about being Gary Vee, among others, some of these people, I think, will end up being collectors. They will see these cards, they'll receive them in hand, and they'll, just like you and I did back in 1979, 1980, they'll fall in love with them too. Not all of them, but some of them. It's a numbers game, just like anything. So some of these guys will remain in the hobby, and I think there's some excitement to that. I want to say hello to Carlos, everybody. Carlos has a YouTube channel, Because I'm Carlos, one of the most logical and well thought out YouTube shows out there when it comes to sports cards. So check that out. And Joe, I see your question. We will get to it shortly. So, John, day trading's interesting. There's something else that's new going on in the hobby, really new. And I heard you talking about it a little bit already today. Something I want to chat about too, and that is the new way to invest in sport and truly invest in them. This isn't collecting, I don't think. This is investing in sports cards. And it's this fractional ownership program and method that has been dreamt up. It's been rolled out now. We've seen it with Rally Road. We've seen it with the Collectible app, and the CEO of whom is going to be on the show with me in the next couple of weeks. And we've also seen it with the individual, Lior Avidar, who purchased the LeBron James RPA from Ken Golden's auctions, as well as the Giannis Logo Man, the 101. He's acquired both these cards, and it looks like his purpose of acquiring these cards was to sell fractional ownership shares in them. Can you explain to the audience what this is? And also, this is going to be a double-barreled question, which I don't like to do, but I'm going to do it now. Explain it, please, John, but also talk about, if you will, if you think it's good for the hobby or bad.
Well, I think, let me explain it first. I'll answer the question in the order you asked it. So these companies, now some of them, Rally Road, will do other things besides cards, cars, watches, purses, high-end stuff of those industries. Collectible is focusing just on the cards, and all will be that same ilk as well, just cards. But premise is, hey, for example, with Collectible, they just launched for a 53 Topps Mantle PSA 10. Now, that's not going to be able. Only speaking for myself here. Sure, I'd love to own one, but I'm not going to be able to afford to buy it. And so what they do is an owner. In this case, it's actually Evan Mathis, former Colts lineman, who's now cards, and he's got some issues that have been brought up. But it's his card, and they sell basically shares. They sell. There's a limit how many shares at how much in the initial offering, like a stock IPO. And then when it closed, it's closed. And then, depending on each platform, I believe Rally Road is 90 days. I think Collectible might be similar, if not exact the same. Then it can be sold. And, depending on what it does go for, you'll get either more money than you first invested, or if it doesn't, they can also sell just shares. In other words, people who didn't get in the original offering can say, hey, I want in. And so now, you might have bought shares at $10 a piece, for example, just using round numbers. And now that they're, the market says we can sell these for 20 if you want any. And so those who bought it at 10 have a choice. I can just keep them, or I can just, people want to buy in at 20. I'm going to sell my 100 shares at $20 a piece and double my money. And that's, could be more than that. I'm just using round numbers.
Okay.
And your second question, is it good or bad? I guess it depends. If, there's people, this, Jeremy, you've done this a long time. There's people who don't believe that the hobby is an investment, and they'll argue to the death of themselves. And so I think to those folks, they think it's just as a sham, and it's, witch doctoring. And to those who probably like us, sort of kind of adapt and where the hobby goes, we kind of flow with it. I'm not opposed to it. It'll be interesting to see if it takes off, if it lasts. I said that about grading, almost 30 years ago, and we know the answer to that question now. And so that's the interesting thing with these fractional share companies. Is this going to be something that not only lasts, but even gets bigger, or is it just going to be they don't do well enough and then it becomes a thing? Oh, remember in 2020 when those three companies launched and that didn't go so hot? And truth be told, I've probably got about $125 combined in the rally and collectible. And I'm not where I'm thinking like I'm going to retire. I'm not, I'm not on that level, but just to dabble in it with doing the podcast. It's a lot, you know this as well as me too, Jim. It's a lot. You can talk about it more when you're actually involved in it and seeing how it's going, than to just say, I think this or I think that. And so I kind of did it almost just with the show, and it's, interesting. And let's be real, I'm never going to probably own a 1953 Topps Mickey Mantle PSA 10. And I can brag to my friends that I'm a minority owner in that car.
Right. So really, it's an easy or a more affordable way to own a piece of an iconic card like that. It's kind of neat because that particular card, I held it in my hand a couple of years ago at the National at Evan Mathis's table, along with his PSA 9 1952 Topps mantle. I have a picture I could go digging for, but I'm holding them both in my hands because, oh wow, that's basically $3 million, $4 million in your hands right there. I thought that was pretty cool. But basically it gives us as sort of common folk the ability to own a share in this card. I'm wondering when the group is going to end up selling the card and cash out for money, does it go to, do you know this? Does it go to a vote? Do all the shareholders get a vote based on how many shares they own? And then if there's a certain amount of yes votes, will they then accept the offer or put it out to auction or something like that? How does it work upon ultimately disposing of the card by the group?
Yeah, I don't know. And Brian Gray this morning on Hobby Hotline brought that up. It's a great question. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm really not sure. And probably, I know that sounds, well, John, you put money in this thing and you don't know the answer to the question. The amount I put in, I mean, not that you want to lose anything, but I mean, if I was in for thousands of bucks, I'm sure I'd probably know a little bit more. I don't even know, they might be kind of navigating as they go too, how they're going to do it. I think the initial, what they want to do is make it at a level where almost you can't lose, a kind of a ground level where worst case scenario, everyone would get their money back, so to speak. You're not going to lose anything. It's just the time that you're involved in it. And that's probably reasonable to say would probably happen. I know the Rice rookie PSA 10 that I invested in was like $5 a share. So, very cheap. It came in by Topps Big League almost. Back goes for more than that. And the Mantles were $10 a share. And so, obviously, and they limit, there was a limit to how many shares you could purchase as well. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying that makes sense because they want to get as many people involved as they can. They don't want to, 4 clients buy up the whole thing, and now there's, they're shutting out hundreds of other potential clients who want to get a taste so that they will then buy into the next offering as well, right? And I think I'll mention on October 7th, I have Ezra Levine joining me on the show. He's the CEO of Collectible, the company you just mentioned, that is only doing sports cards as far as fractional ownership going, versus Rally Road, who does sports cars and Merkin purses or Birkin or whatever they're called, and a bunch of other highly collectible items. So Ezra will be joining me, and we'll get all the answers to kind of the ins and outs of fractional ownership as far as sports cards goes on that night. What's neat is just if you think about it, any stock that you own is fractional ownership. Any timeshare that you own is fractional ownership. Land syndication is fractional ownership. It's not a new concept in the sports card industry. It's been around for a long time in terms of investments go, and now it's finally being applied to sports cards. And truth be told, it's happened before this too. I don't have evidence of it, but I'm certain. Well, actually, it happened in the early 90s when Wayne Gretzky and Bruce McNall each purchased a 50% fractional ownership in the Wagner card. So buying cards in a group is all this is, but this is formalized and it's being regulated by the SEC. These companies are all regulated by the SEC in the United States. So that's pretty cool. I'm in Canada, as you know. I'd love to be able to buy in. I would do it. I know a lot of people wouldn't. And you talked about, a lot of the old guard who say collecting is just a hobby or it's not an investment. It's just a hobby. But I say those might be some, and no offense to those guys, because they've been in the hobby so long, but they might still have flip phones, right? You have to adapt to new things, right? If you want to stay on top of things, you want to stay current, I think it's great to adapt because the world is changing so fast, faster than ever before. So, and our hobby is part of the world. It's part of our human experience. So if you don't want to be left in the dust, try and keep up and watching hobby content is a great way to stay on top of things. So, and we are going to talk a bit about hobby content. Before we move on, though, I'm just going to let's say hello to a few more people who have joined us tonight. We have Orvi in the house. Says good Saturday evening to you too. Card Collector, welcome to the show. Great to see you again. Ernie, thank you so much. 2-2. Good to see Dallas putting up a fight. The Phillies lost. Sorry to Phillies fans. What else do we have here? Tim Heacock, welcome to the show, Tim. He says this is a bit scary in an unregulated industry, although it isn't in terms of fractional ownership. It's not unregulated. He says you need a prospectus to do this in the investing world with significant requirements and regulations involved. And yeah, you certainly need a prospectus in terms of issuing securities and any sort of equity raises, really. But to Tim, these companies are regulated by the SEC, so there is regulation when it comes to fractional ownership. Rich Klein says, "I have a flip phone," and I guess you don't. I'm guessing, Rich, that you don't have any fractional ownership shares anywhere, then, do you? But Rich, you stay on top of things, man. For a guy who has a flip phone, you're staying current.
Don't feel bad, Rich. My dad does too.
There you go. He's not as old as your dad, though. Your dad's 82, John.
He's not
that old. Ziggy No, who co-hosts on Hobby Hotline every so often, has his own YouTube channel by the same name of Ziggy No. Welcome to the show. Check out his YouTube channel, everybody. It's called Ziggy No. I love his daily update. Comes out every day. He talks about what's going on in the hobby, what's going on in hobby content. Interesting show. Check it out. Rich says, correct, my friend. He does not own any fractional ownership shares. Okay. So before we move on and talk a bit more about grading, I do want the viewers to benefit from your experience in grading. We were chatting the other night and we talked about how the hobby has changed since you and I came in it in the very early 80s. And you made the comment about eBay. You let me know that you've been on eBay really since eBay started. And you went back while we were in chatting last night, and you realized you got on eBay in 1996. I thought I got on early. I didn't come on until 1999, December 1999. You were already a veteran by then. You made the comment to me that the advent of eBay has been both a blessing and a curse. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, I did an episode on sports card nation, shameless plug again, called the eBay, the blessing and the curse. But basically, I'll give you the synopsis of even that episode. In my store days, as you mentioned, from 92 to 96, when eBay was basically to the back end when I got out, and I had a partner and I wound up selling out. But, people were coming in the store and saying, hey, that's really how I found out about eBay, quite frankly, was people were coming in the store and saying, John, hey, that Jeter card, can you do $15? I can get it on eBay for $15. Will you do the same price? And I'm like, eBay? And that's where I'm like, what is eBay? What's going on? Where's this new store, eBay? How far away from my store is it? And like, no, it's an auction online. And, obviously, what it's changed. I mean, the good thing is, as we know today, it's not fledgling as it was when in 95, 96. You could really, if you can't get it there, it probably doesn't exist almost. And, now with instant transactions and PayPal and Venmo and Pell and who knows what the next money, instant transfer money. You can get anything you want, and not just cards, but almost anything. People sell cars on there, and so it's made the world a smaller place as far as business goes. You can, international shipping and whatnot. That's the blessing, is no matter what you're looking for, if you have the funds and the means, you can acquire it. The curse to me is, it's hurt the brick and mortar, not just card stores. I mean, this is a hobby show, but it's definitely, we have, this as well as me, we have a lot less card stores today than we did back then. And I'm a card store guy. I believe in them. I think they're important. They're important for socialization in the hobby. There's nothing like going to a card store or a card show and you want a card, a Gretzky rookie or whatever, I'm just using that for example, and have it in your hand and you know what condition it is, and you can look at it. You can ask the owner of the car, hey, can I take it out of the top loader and take a better look? Or can you do that? I'd like to take and it's instant gratification. If you make the transaction, you walk out of that show, that store, with the card in your possession immediately, and you know what you're getting. You see it up close and live. And, you can buy something on eBay. You hear stories all the time. I didn't get that card that was on the site. The picture was, different than the card I received. The card I received, had a bent corner. That picture didn't. And, I don't think you can replace, truthfully, 100% card stores or card shows. But the curse of eBay is there's a lot less of both of those. Because of eBay, and not just in the card industry, but even other stores, other industries. And I don't always think that's a good thing. The good thing is, if the other side of that coin is really almost no matter what card you want, as long as you have the funds, you can probably go to eBay, find it, and acquire it.
Yeah, that right there to me is the blessing. Is that I remember back in the early to mid 90s, finding a Bobby Orr rookie card, which is, an iconic card across the hobby. I grew up in Winnipeg, which, just north of North Dakota in Canada. And, there was like one Bobby Orr rookie known in the city that was at a card shop, and you'd go in and you'd look at it. It was in the brick on the shelf behind, and you kind of just looked at it like, wow, a Bobby Orr rookie card, what a beast of a card. Now that not just a card like that, but any card that you couldn't find locally. Now, as soon as the internet came around and eBay came on board, you could find anything you wanted anytime, pretty much. It took a while for it to mature, but eventually nowadays, back then a card out of 5,000 was super rare. Now a card out of 5, you're probably going to find it eventually if it's out of 5. But a card out of 5,000 back then, you couldn't ever really find. That was pretty interesting. That, to me, that's sort of the blessing of it. The curse, like you said, is that it hurts retail. And nothing has hurt retail more, I think, than maybe Amazon, which has hurt all retail, bricks and mortar, I should say, which is sort of the analogy to eBay hurting the local card shop in terms of the bricks and mortar retail there. You also mentioned, now, when you go to a show or you go to a card shop and you buy a card, you get that instant gratification, which is something that, is very, very, it's almost like a lifeline for people these days, that instant gratification thing. But I would argue, and not argue with you, but I would, kind of opine that, there's something to be said for buying a card on the internet and then having to wait, from anywhere from 2 days to 2 months, depending, for it to arrive. And the excitement of waiting for it, to me, that is part of the experience of buying and owning a card. Is you hit bid, then you see you won the auction, and then you wait for the card to come, and then you get it out of your mailbox, and that's all part of the experience to me. So I see that. I see the bad, but it's all part of the evolution of the world too. Go ahead.
Yeah, mail days. It's mail days. We got YouTube videos. I do them of some of my mail days, no doubt, Jeremy. That's a great point, by the way, as well. Yeah, I mean, you love those. It's like Christmas, and it's not Christmas. It could be. It could be September. Here we are in September. You go to your mailbox, and it's some, obviously, with tracking and UPS, USPS informed delivery here in the state. I mean, a lot of times what's coming that day, but sometimes you don't, and you're like, "What is this? I forgot what I even bought," and it's almost like a surprise to yourself. And so you can't. I mean, there's a adrenaline rush with that. Truth be told, like you said, and I don't want that to not be the case. I'm just saying, retail wise, like you even reiterated too, is kind of taking a little bit on the chin, and they've, card stores have sort of had to reinvent themselves. What I did in 92 through 96, truth be told, while I was successful then, that business model would not work today. I wouldn't last 4 years today with what I did then, and that shows you how the hobby has changed and pivoted. You can't just do the same thing you did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It won't translate.
No, it's like you said, they have to adapt. I see LCS owners all the time, and some of them have adapted, where they're doing online group breaks, they're taking their business to Facebook Live, they're doing some different things to complement the in-store traffic, and especially during the pandemic, that has certainly decreased. So some people are evolving, and other card shop owners will get lost, and we will lose some, not because of anything other than their inability to adapt and to find other ways. And I shouldn't say no other reason. There are other reasons, of course, but I mean, I think you're going to lose some because they're just not able to keep up with the times and what's going on. Okay, that's good stuff, man. I want to go back. I missed a couple questions about the fractional ownership, so we're going to backtrack a little bit, and we're going to go to Legion's comment here. He says, "Is there a third-party guarantor that holds the card for fractional ownership? Because if not, it opens up opportunities for mismanagement and scamming." And do you know the answer to this, John? Do you know if there's third-party guarantors?
With the shares that I bought, I had to sign like 5 different things, literally DocuSign on my phone with my finger. And I remember reading in there that there wasn't a firm that was sort of overseeing all the transactions and monitoring them and documenting them and that sort of thing. So there is someone outside of Rally Collectible that's just probably making sure that stuff's above board and that there's no funny business going on. I don't. If you're asking me a specific firm name, I don't have it. But I remember seeing. I know that sounds terrible. But again, remember, I'm talking about $100-something, not.
No. I think the question really is, where are these cards being held? Are they being held by Rally and Collectible?
Yeah.
Or
I believe they have a vault. I believe the word that they use is a vault. Now, whether that's a real vault or that's code, for a very secure location, I don't know. That's a great.
Yeah.
There you go for when Ezra is on.
I think it's one of these sort of buyer beware sort of things, because the concern that Legion has here about opportunities for mismanagement and scamming. I mean, yeah, I suppose that I suppose it exists. I don't know for sure, and we'll find out on October 7th from Ezra. But I have to think that they've considered this, and as the owners of these companies, they've put in policies that will sort of protect the investor. I assume that might be that might be not a great assumption, but I think it's probably fair. I've been involved in the investment world before, and you're not regulated by the SEC if you're not taking precautions to protect your investors. So, but we'll find out more on the 7th. A great question. Thanks for that one. And then Carlos chimes in and he says most of those, and I think he's talking about just regular equities. He says most of those securities are tradable on multiple platforms, being stock markets, and the owners have a responsibility to act in the interest of the shareholders. We'll have to see if they have the same here. Yeah, we'll have to see if they do have something similar there. And I hear what Carlos is saying with respect to, financial instruments. And these cards are now somewhat financial instruments. They are a store of value. They represent real value. That is liquid value in most cases. So we'll have to see how that, when we get some more answers. And I'm looking forward to that. I think that the opportunity for fractional ownership is huge. I think it's a huge. I think it can be and likely will be a huge thing. Just like you said, John, which was funny. You said it at first. Grading came out. You thought it was a flash in the pan, and now it is a major part of the hobby. I can see fractional ownership also becoming a major part of the hobby because even for security reasons, maybe you don't want to hold your own cards. So if someone else holds it for you and you want a piece of it, and you're just building a portfolio, it's great for investors. It's decent for collectors like you and me who just want to be involved. And it's awesome for straight out investors who don't really care about holding the cards themselves. All right, let's keep on going. Tim says, I like this. I remember having to mail US dollar money orders to pay for my eBay auctions, right? Yeah.
I do too. That's funny. Old school stuff right there.
Yam says, my LCS keeps all their top cards in the back for their eBay listings, which is kind of too bad, because I love it. I go into a shop and I, have even my Eastridge here in Calgary where I go with Mike, I'll say to him, hey, anything new? He goes, yeah, but it's going out for grading. Is it gone yet? No, it's not gone yet. Can I see it? No. Oh man, maybe I'll pay you for it. You never know, right? But you can't even see these cards sometimes. And he goes, unless you know to ask, you'll never even get to see those in person. Well, sometimes if you do ask, you're still not going to get to see them in person, right?
Yeah.
Card Killer says, I miss local card shows, smaller ones. eBay made those go away. I'm old enough to remember when you could smoke at those shows and there was a cloud of smoke above the tables. Crazy. Yeah. That would not be, never mind smoking for your health and for secondhand smoke, but nowadays we're smart enough now to know that for our cards, you don't want a card that smells like cigarettes. That's
look, they're right in eBay listings, smoke-free home, and the one caller there that wrote about, the check. And I remember the eBay listings in the early days. It would say in the description, check or money order, check will wait 7-10 days to clear before I can mail you your card. Obviously now we have PayPal and instant money exchange, and you don't have to wait that 7-10 days. But if you mailed a check back in the eBay early days, it seemed like forever before that card came back.
Yeah, it could be a month. Now it's a few days, right? Yeah, no doubt. Beans Ball Card Blog says, Yo, John.
His name is Ken.
Ken, hello, Ken. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining. Paul Cashman says, Enron was also regulated. It was regulated, but they were cheating, And I'm not, I say it like as if no one else cheats. I don't mean that. Enron was cheating. It's kind of funny. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show before, but part of the reason I am where I am is because of Enron, actually, simply because in the year 2001, when the whole Enron thing was happening, the accounting firm that went down with Enron was called Arthur Andersen. They were an international firm with over 200,000 employees, of which I was one of them. And when when the firm was going down, I remember going to work every morning, and our managing partner would be like, "Oh, it's okay. We're all gonna have our job, no problem." And we knew we are in Winnipeg, Canada, a really small town. And meanwhile, down out of the Houston office, the Enron thing was going on. And that Enron thing took down the whole international firm. It ceased to exist. Our office ceased to exist. So I saw it coming. I said, maybe I'll have time to move out of Winnipeg. And I ended up moving to Calgary. And, one thing leads to another. And I'm kind of where I am in the hobby now, I think partially because I came to Calgary. So in a way, Enron has something to do with me being here tonight to some degree.
It was meant to be.
If you look at the butterfly effect sort of thing. Your buddy says, "Yep, I've been in the hobby since I could pay for eBay items with cash or money order and a self-addressed stamped envelope." No doubt. I remember that
good old days.
And Paul lets us know that the Stanley Cup Finals game is 2-2 going into overtime. Good to know. Thank you, Paul. I love being kept up to speed on what's going on in the playoffs. So thank you so much for that. All right. Before we get into kind of grading, is there anything else you want to say, John, about how, your opinion on all these influencers? And I'm not, whether they're influencers like a Gary Vee who is an influencer outside the hobby but likes sports cards, or an influencer who is in the hobby that has thousands of followers or subscribers. When these guys go on and they talk about what they're doing, is it, and it's sort of a similar question to earlier, but I was going to say, is it good or bad? Is it healthy for the hobby? And I know, because you said it earlier that your answer might, there's more transactions. That's a good thing. I guess the better question then, John, is what is the risk that that thousands of people come in to the hobby, take advice from people who may or may not know what they're talking about or give good or bad advice, and they have a bad experience? Where does that leave us, the lifers who aren't going anywhere no matter what happens with this market today, the way it is?
Well, for me, it's easy for me to say, because whether Gary Vee or another influencer says, "Hey, I'm buying all these," or "You should too," or "Here's my recommendation," if I do it because ultimately I want to do that. I think the dark area is when someone hasn't been, like you mentioned, hasn't been in the hobby in a while, and then they take that information as gospel, let's say, and that's the risk. Now, my argument, even in those cases, Jeremy, is I don't blame the person saying, you can turn a microphone on and say whatever you want. Now, I'm not Gary Vee, and I don't have anywhere near that influence, so I'm not saying that. But ultimately, we're kind of responsible for our own actions or transactions. And so if Gary Vee says, "Hey, I'm buying all Devin Booker cards," and everyone else does it, it is what it is. I think people still have to do that. They still have to take out their wallet or their PayPal account and buy those cards. And I don't think it's Gary Vee's fault. Now, a lot of people accuse we've heard the term pump and dump, where there's a method to their madness where they're buying these cards cheap first or cheaper first, and then they're like, "Hey, I'm investing in him." And then because they say that, and they know people are going to believe and act on what they say, now they're putting those cards they bought at $100 out for $300 and selling to those people that heard what they said. That's an issue. I mean, to say it wouldn't be is disingenuous, but still, someone has to be willing to pay that for that transaction to happen. So if Gary Vee or anyone, I know he's the poster child for this topic, so I keep going to him. He knows that himself, so we're not breaking news here. If he's doing that and it's genuine and there's no agenda there, then I don't really have an issue with it. We still have to act on it ourselves as consumers. The Flex Seal guy that comes on, right? Billy Mays here, or whatever. People still have to buy that. You may not like that guy or stick, or it's a gimmick, or it doesn't really work, but millions of people buy it, right? I think it's the responsibility in the end of the day has to fall on the buyers to make those decisions. The unfortunate part is those folks that have bad motives or not the good of the hobby in mind are sort of preying on the newer folks that just are impulse or kind of just buying into what someone says, and that's the inherent risk.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you, and I think that where I have hope in all this is that, again, the numbers game. Hopefully, a lot of these people, or some of them, stick with the hobby, just like you and I did after seeing our first sports cards when we were 7 or 8 years old. So I think some of these guys will. I think the collector gene exists, and you're either predisposed to wanting to collect, or you're not, or it may be either I don't know, are you born with it or do you learn it? I'm not exactly sure, but if you are predisposed to collecting and you're introduced to it because of these influencers, it's not a horrible thing. If 100 people are introduced to it and 10 of them stick around, hey, that's 10 people more than we had than before. So that's I think it's not the worst thing. Eric Westrom says, always do your own research and thinking about what you want to buy, whether it's for your own collection or to sell later. That's great advice. That way you can't blame anybody else, right? Like you said, John, we're responsible for our own actions and transactions, and that's exactly why you say that, right?
Yeah, that's a great point with Eric, and I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, it's nice to get an opinion, right? We all have done that. Me and you've done that, even with all our experience. Hey,
I did it
what
today.
do you think of this deal? Or you think it's a good deal? You think I should wait? You think I should act on it now, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, we might value someone's opinion, but I've gotten advice and not taken it, and I've gotten advice and did exactly what the person advising me has said. It's still, you kind of want that outside thought or the outside opinion, but at the end, it's your decision which way you go, and I think it's the same way with cards. It's great to listen to people if that's what you want to do, but like Eric said, at the end of the day, do your own research too. Don't just listen to someone and not do a little bit of fact finding yourself as well.
For sure. Well said. All right, man, let's move along. I will watch the comments, everybody, for the trickling comments that come in on these the last couple topics we've had, but we're going to move on to grading, because John's been involved in grading for really since it started. He's been, although he thought it might have been a flash in the pan at the beginning, he quickly learned it wasn't, and he's been submitting cards. He told me he's sent in several thousands of cards for grading over the years. So I really want him to share his experience with all of us. So John, let's just start off with what can you tell us about, there's three big companies. There's PSA, BGS, and SGC. Where do you think each of them, one at a time, if you don't mind, where do you think they excel, each of them, and where do you think they do not excel?
All right. So I got to give a sort of a disclosure first to be transparent. SGC does sponsor Sports Card Nation, but that being said, I'm going to give you the straight scoop and be honest regardless. Like you said, I think there's really three. We do have one that's coming. I think they're SCG or something to that effect, or CSG. They came from the comic book side, and now we're entering the arena. They haven't actually started yet. They're building their personnel and their staff up. But so right now, there's the big three, as you say: PSA, BGS, and SGC. If you ask 10 people to rank them, you'll get 6 different orders. They've all been around. A lot of people think SGC's new, and they're not. They've been around almost 20 years themselves. SGC's got the label as being sort of a vintage grading company, but they've made strides. If you look at realized sales, there used to be a gap between PSA and SGC. Whether you like it or not, that gap has closed, and we've seen a couple big cards, SGC wise, actually sell more than PSA. When we're talking about the big three, you got to get the elephant in the room is when you're going to get your cards back. And right now they're all in that same boat. It's not a good boat, and it's taking a while for submissions to get back, unless you're on that $100 like express 2-day, 3-day thing. Outside of that, you're going to be waiting a while. And we can get into PSA. Most people have heard some of the scandals and issues. They're publicly, out of the three grading companies, they're the only publicly traded one on Wall Street, and so they have a board of directors, and and there's been issues there where some people aren't there anymore, and there's some new people that have just taken positions, just because I think the direction they were going in, some folks inside the walls there didn't like it, and so there's where there's smoke, there's fire. We can say that with PSA. I think Beckett, with all due respect to my friend Eric, I know he's not in the grading room itself, but they've probably lost the most out of the three. They've lost really the most traction. It used to be people would make the argument, who's one or two, PSA or BGS, and then SGC was kind of like the little stepbrother that wasn't really in the family. Like he was adopted. He gets to ride in the back of the station wagon. He never gets the front seat. And, that dynamic has changed as far as I'm concerned. And many people, and myself included, would probably move them up ahead. You hear more PSA SGC debates now than the old PSA BGS debates. It's funny when we talk about these three companies, it's a hot topic. I mean, people get really, really fired up, like even resulting to insulting people and name calling, and this company sucks, and you don't know what you're talking about. Like I've seen literally, online fights just over the companies. And, so I think that the gap has closed. I'm going to put SGC second. Some people are going to probably listen like their mouth's probably wide open. But regardless of whether you think, Beckett's still second, or even some people might put BGS first, to me, they've lost the most traction. You hear a lot less about them than a year or two ago, quite frankly. And there's a reason, whatever you want to put that, the Black Label scandal. They just raised their prices. I don't know by how many percent, but it was a significant increase. Their like 10-day service is like they've said it themselves. It's like don't expect it for 6 weeks and or 8 weeks, and so some of the stuff they're doing, Jeremy, is sort of like self-inflicted. It's like some of the press releases could have been worded better. Like who's proofreading this stuff before they releasing this? And I've read things where I'm like, man, you could have changed that to that, said the same thing, but it just would have played better. And I'm not a writer, but but even I could see that. Like how is that getting out of the building written like that? And I it's one of those questions I don't have the definitive answer, because there's really no true definitive answer. It's like asking someone, do you like Burger King or McDonald's or Wendy's? Right. And, somebody's going to say Wendy's. Someone's going to say, oh, man, the fries at McDonald's are way better than Burger King. And so it's whoever you ask. But myself, that SGC, that gap is closed. And that's not really my opinion. That you can look that stuff up and
that's
see.
Your
I mean,
that's your observation.
And you just seen a Jordan, the Jordan rookie SGC, $420,000. It's the highest Jordan rookie pristine 10, and they there's some other ones too, and the gap is closing. Now there's people just don't like them and won't accept them and just are vehemently opposed to them, but they're here whether you like it or not.
That's right. I think a lot of it, you talked about like online fights, and when I think of that, a lot of people, they speak or they type their experiences and their thoughts and their opinions, and a lot of those opinions are based on their true and real experiences that they've had with the grading companies. And so they're gonna, just like anything, if you get hot coffee spilled at you on McDonald's, you're gonna take it out on McDonald's, right? You might go eating at Burger King, sort of thing, to use the restaurant analogy again. So I think a lot of it has to do with that personal experience. As far as them taking so much time to get cards back now, I think there's a lot of limiting factors there. Not to make excuses for them, but there are reasons for these things that are happening. But I wanted to ask you this. Actually, before I ask you that, I want to also mention that there's some chatter about SGC is. A lot of people think it's new because they seem to have come out of nowhere in the last really 6 months. But as I know, they've been around longer than Beckett Grading Services have been around. They've been around almost as long as PSA. And like you said earlier, they were the go-to for vintage, really pre-war vintage for the longest time. I remember walking around the National in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and you would see hundreds of SGC cards, but the cards in them were all pre-war. Not all, but many were pre-war. So they've been around a long time, and now they've got younger leadership, and they're really trying to penetrate the modern game, as they should. Of course, you're going to want to build your business. It only makes good sense. So the common generally accepted rule in the hobby that is based on my perceptions and observations has been that pre-war cards SGC, vintage cards PSA, modern cards BGS. Never mind BVG, just Beckett Grading for modern cards. That's a general rule. Do you sense that changing at all now, where PSA is getting more modern submissions and Beckett is getting more vintage submissions, and obviously SGC is getting more submissions across all eras? Are you noticing that as well?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't want to disagree with you. I think you're right. I think at one time,
John, it's not disagreeing. These are just my perception.
Yeah.
And from my conversations with hundreds of people over the years, that's what people generally believe that I've come across. So feel free to state what you've perceived.
I think it was once like that. I think that was right on the money, what you said. But I think those days are different now. I mean, right now, SGC is getting heavy modern. They're I know from talking to Peter Steinberg quite a bit. They're at a 700% increase in submissions, with a good percentage of that being modern now. And the trouble with SGC, they sort of. I had Peter on a couple weeks ago, and he said this himself. They sort of dug a little hole for themselves, because when PSA and Beckett was kind of shut down with the pandemic, SGC, and it was smart. They really went on the offensive with ads and, hey, we're open. You'll get your stuff back, timely. Someone else can't do that. We can. We're the answer. And it worked. That ad campaign worked tremendously. It worked too well, as Peter said. And it sort of bit them, because the one thing they were bragging about with timely getting your stuff back very quickly, because their business exploded even more than they anticipated. And he said, no excuses. They got to own it. They got in way over their head, and they bit off sort of more than they can chew. And now they're playing catch up. And, that's the comment you're going to see on message boards or even their own social media posts. They'll post something and read the comments. It's people saying, hey, how's it feel? Like, you're making fun of PSA and Beckett. What are you doing now? You did the same thing. You got egg on your face, so to speak. And, Peter was for it, right? He said, I mean, it's a good problem that our business has went up that much, but we sort of got caught not anticipating to that level. And now we have to hire more staff. They're hiring more staff, and so is PSA. And so they're all scrambling to, up their staffing and streamline their process. And I think even you're talking about two companies that, like you said, have been around 20-something years, and they're still sort of flying by their seat of the pants. And that's strictly because the grading industry, the grading part of this hobby has exploded. That's the word. You can't, make it smaller. It's exploded. You at the National, you see the lines for the grading submission, and we're kind of making like a Beckett an afterthought. their lines are long too. They're not hurting for business, and all three are just being bombarded with submissions and struggling to get them back into the collectors and dealers' hands. And we've heard, I'm sure you've heard so everyone has the answer, right? Automation. Let's have, in baseball, we want to have computer umpires and get rid of the human element. And you're hearing that now in the grading industry.
Yeah.
Let's get computers and scanners and lasers, and it gives the card a grade. I'm not sure I really like that.
Yeah.
I know the negative. People say if the grader got in a fight with his wife that morning before he went to work, he's going to take it out on my card. Maybe my card's between a 9 and an 8.5, and because his wife yelled at him, I get an 8.5, right? I don't know if that's true. I'm sure anything's possible.
Again, it comes, John. It comes back to everyone's going to have comments based on their experiences. So I hear what you're saying. Let's just move along a little bit here. I want to get to a couple comments here, if I may. You mentioned grading has exploded. It's been exploding for about the last 15 years. But in the last 6 months, it's exploded like supernova style, where nothing that they could have imagined. And it's because people had more time to send in more cards, I believe, and because cards became worth so much more that they were now sending more in. I've heard people refer to the junk. I've heard the junk gem era, and I've heard the junk slab era. I like the junk slab era as a term for it. And I don't say I'm not certain I buy into it yet, but if you're going to buy into us being right now in a junk slab era, just wait till these companies get through their backlog and there's thousands more cards out, tens of thousands more cards out on the secondary market. We may be even more in a junk slab era if that's where we're going. Let's just get to a few comments though here, John. Beans Ball Cards blog says, I would love to see someone say SGC is new. I would lay into them as much as I lay into Project 2020. Yeah, a lot of people just aren't aware that they've been around so long. Carlos says, I was chuckling about that some months ago. You missed out. I guess he saw someone do that. Yam chimes in and says, CGC is live already in Pokemon and gaining some respect. And I'd expect them to gain respect considering they come from the comic grading background. So they already have processes and policies and staff and reputation. So that's great. Carlos said, this is interesting. The ranking, and this is the ranking of the grading companies, is going to be based on what you're ranking. Are you ranking the value on resale, the attractiveness of the holder? And that's one we didn't talk about yet, but that's a big one. A lot of people hate one slab and love the other. And we all, just like some people like the looks of one card and hate the looks of another, right? We all have our own kind of taste in that when it comes to what the card looks like all dressed up in these slabs. He then goes on to mention grading consistency, and the order can change depending on what you want to talk about. And he's 100% right. You pick any of those criteria, you may get a different order for each criteria. Let's keep on moving. Beans Ball Card blog says, I remember SGC working with Collector's Edge in 99-2000. There would be slabbed cards in retail boxes. Yeah, I remember that as well. I think many people underestimate the fact that PSA has a set registry and the other two don't. I believe that would help close these gaps a tremendous amount. Another excellent point that neither you or I mentioned already, John, but the PSA set registry, I think, gives PSA a real big advantage and I'm speaking from my own habits and experience. I partake in well over 100 sets on the PSA set registry that I have one or two cards or more in. And I find it very entertaining and a lot of fun. So that does give their slab the benefit, because a lot of collectors, while some collectors will buy a card, does not, they'll examine the card, they'll decide I want this card and I don't care whose holder it's in, whereas other collectors want that holder because of the PSA set registry. Really interesting. 3B Collection, welcome to the show, says, whatever happened to PGS? Are they still around? I can't speak to that, but what I can speak to is there are two other, I'm up in Canada and there are two other grading companies up here. One's called KSA and one is called MNT. And while Canadians are well aware of these two companies, I don't think any Americans really know about them unless you come up to the Toronto Expo twice a year and see them there. But there are a couple of others. And we always wonder what it'll take to get a serious player in Canada. And I think as long as PSA, BGS, and SGC are, residing in a country that is 10 times the size of Canada population-wise, it's going to be tough for any Canadian company to really compete with those big three. Does that make sense to you, John?
Yeah, I've heard of MNT. I've heard of them, not KSA.
And KSA has been around for 30 years.
Yeah. Are they? I mean, there's no affiliation. It's almost like it makes you wonder if like PSA or one of the other even two companies even look to maybe like acquire them and get that Canadian market. You know what I mean? Even more so. I wonder if that's ever been even on the table. But I mean, I'm assuming more about. I mean, I'm heavy hockey. I'm assuming that they mostly grade.
Yeah. Here's a funny comment by Paul Cashme. I like the junk slab term. I shake my head at some submissions. Friends don't let friends submit pro set. That's hilarious. Except for the Stanley Cup hologram or the football. What's the football trophy called again? It's just
Lombardi.
Thank you. Carlos says KSA hurt themselves a lot with the consistency. I've seen enough of their graded cards that are borderline. That hurts perception. The other problem with them is that their slabs are really junky and cards slide right out of the spot very regularly, which is just unacceptable in my mind. Yam says a third party should create a non-denominational set registry service. That's a very interesting suggestion right there, Yam. Really.
Yeah.
So someone unrelated to these companies, create your own set registry or create a set registry for the hobby where all slabs are welcome, not just PSA, not just Beckett, not just SGC. That's a real interesting idea, Yam. That could have some legs if anybody wants to run with it. Sean Robb jumps in and says, do you think people overemphasize the four? Sean, so off topic, my man. So off topic. We're not going to go there right now, Sean, but thanks for the question. We'll see if we come around to it later. Let's keep talking about grading, though. John, another thing I want you to address for everybody is, and I'm not as aware of it as you are, but there's been an explosion of, I've heard it referred to as the explosion of the nines. What does that mean? Explosion of the nines.
The nines, PSA nines were always sort of looked at, or just nines. I said PSA nines, but predominantly PSA nines. But nines in the grading industry in general were always viewed as the same price or just slightly more than what a raw card would go for or sell for. And in the last year or two, that has been altered tremendously. That landscape has changed where nines have went up. In some cases, on certain cards, 200 to 300%. The one that really sticks out to me is the Griffey Upper Deck rookie. You could at one point you could get a PSA 9 for 30, 40, $50 somewhere in that range, and that thing just exploded. And the reason is I just think a lot of people, are not. You could argue, what's the real big difference? You look at a 9 in a slab and a 10 in the slab, and you put them next to each other. Sometimes it's hard to discern any difference, and so people want to change that 9, crack it out of that, resubmit it, and make it a 10. And then again, obviously, price-wise, from a 9 to a 10, even with the 9s going up in value, was still significant as well.
I wonder if some people are investing more into nines because they think, hey, I can take a PSA 9, I can submit it to Beckett, maybe it gets a 9.5, which generally sells for more than a PSA 9. Maybe it gets a BGS 10 even, who knows? Or maybe you resubmit it to PSA and your 9 turns into a 10, knowing, as we know, there's no PSA 9.5 grade available while BGS does have one. I wonder if some of that's going on. Do you think some of that is going on where you're buying them? It's almost like buying really nice raw cards to get graded, but now you're looking at buying PSA 9s because they have the best chance of getting a BGS 9.5. Does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you hit it right on the head there, Jeremy. I think you got that. I think even past the 9.5s, I think people even really are thinking bigger. Hey, this could grade a 10, if in the right grader's hand. And, I look at a 9, I look at a 10, I don't see a huge difference. This could, and then when I get it back next time, I could have the 10 people, it's called crossover. They send it to a different company. People will even send it back to the same company, PSA. They'll break the PSA 9 out and send it back to PSA, just hoping this time it comes back a 10. And it's made the 9s hugely more marketable than they previously were. They've exploded. I'm not going to lie. I've sort of taken advantage. We talk about adapting. Truth be told, full disclosure, I've probably benefited there were 9s that would sit in these shoe boxes here with not, very little chance. I don't want to say very little chance, but, not highly desirable. And literally very quickly, those, that dynamic changed. And, I wound up having to actually list a lot more 9s I had that I didn't even list because they weren't, they would just sit there and it's changed the whole landscape of the grading. Now, will that continue? Right now, it is. I think it's sort of corrected itself a little bit, but it's still there. It's still happening.
And at the end of the day, a PSA 9 is still, supposed to be a card that is in mint condition. And I remember, back in the 80s, early 90s, we all wanted mint condition cards. And I remember thinking a card could be mint condition. Centering wasn't really a big deal to me back in those years when I was just filling in my binders with my set, my base sets of O-Pee-Chee hockey every year, from 80 to 1989 type of thing. You just wanted the cards back then more than anything, right? Yeah. It wasn't so, but we wanted mint condition, but I don't remember looking at centering as much, but that's besides the point. It's still a mint condition card. That's quite respectable. I think as far as vintage cards goes, there's maybe a bigger difference between the different grade, a 7 to an 8, an 8 to a 9, and all the other ones, versus a modern card, which are, the technologies, the printing technologies have just gotten so much better, even though we still see issues right out of the pack all regularly. But I think it's much tougher to see the difference between a modern day card that's in a PSA 9 versus a BGS 9.5 versus a PSA 10 or a BGS 10. So I can see, and it's nice. It's interesting to hear that you've benefited from it because, but it takes a keen eye to do that as well. So a couple of things from there, right? There's opportunity, I suppose, but also the PSA 9 is a very respectful grade and it's way more affordable than a PSA 10 in most cases, way more affordable. So you can still have a mint condition card and have a ton of money left over to buy other cards with, which I think is in a very attractive situation for a lot of people who don't have unlimited funds and want to have more cards in their collection. So let's get to a few comments, and then we're going to move along. Where were we here? Right here. So first, Dave Jones says, great idea, Yamwax, on the non-denominational set registry, which I think is a really good idea. Eric says, really good comments on the individual preference of the look of the slab and buying based on wanting the card. I have cards slabbed by all three. I'm usually after the card, but do look closely at the card in the holder. Again, you're dressing up your card. You want it to look nice. I've heard people refer to the SGC holder as a tuxedo because it's black. It almost looks like you're zipped up. You got a nice black. I think it looks all right. I like the looks of all three slabs. I like the slabs that are a little bit lighter. Like BGS has a thicker slab. I prefer a bit of a thinner slab. But again, it's all dependent on the card. And I'm happy. I have several of each in my collection as well. Bobby Burrell says, we're in the 1990s boom 2.0. I've heard a lot of people talking about it. Are we repeating the 90s? And, I think there are some aspects of today's market that are reminiscent of the 90s, but I think there's more that aren't. It's almost like comparing, it's almost like comparing Luka to Michael Jordan or Connor McDavid to Gordie Howe or, Patrick Mahomes to Johnny Unitas. I mean, you're talking about players in different eras using different equipment, eating different food, not smoking and drinking beer during the games. And when we talk about the market now versus the market then, there's so many differences that it's hard to really know if we are truly in a 2.0. But I think this using the terminology 2.0 is it makes sense because it's appropriate because 2.0 at the core of using that terminology, it means to advance. and the hobby has advanced along with all the technology and business around it and methods of trade. So interesting comment. That's worthy of a whole show on itself, is comparing today to the 90s, right? And Legion says, I think that people would rather buy a PSA 9 than take a risk on a raw card, and maybe don't want to spend the money for a 10. It's already encapsulated, so someone else has paid and waited. Very true. And I think that makes a lot of sense, Legion. Yeah, no real commentary after that. That's what I would say too. All right.
And one of the viewers mentioned with KSA having some of the overgrading issues. That's something that's plagued Beckett recently, and I think has kind of tied into why they've sort of fallen back a little bit. The Zion Prism got released, PWCC, and it was clearly not a Gem Mint 10, and it got encapsulated as such, and they really got raked over the coals, and probably should have. I know I posted it and said, this is kind of ridiculous, and it's that kind of stuff that's, when it happens, I know it's all, grading is subjective. I think we all can agree on that. It's I always use grading and like an umpire in baseball. It's borderline strike, right? That umpire calls it a strike, and the next game pitches in the same spot, but that ump doesn't raise his hand, it's a ball. And so grading's sort of like that too. But when you see a card that's graded a 10 and it's very obvious that it's really not, it's hard to explain that one away. And then when it gets out there for public consumption, as that card did, it's that horse has left the barn and you can't get it back in. And so
it's like it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a second to ruin it. And I'm not saying that any of these companies' reputations are ruined, although they are in the minds of certain hobbyists, I'm sure. I hear what you're saying, because we see off-centered 10s all the time. You mentioned grading is subjective, and you hear that all the time. You hear comments like, it depends what kind of day the grader's having and all that. But it really shouldn't be that subjective, because the grading companies have standards. And if you go on PSA's website, they're very clear as to what constitutes a PSA 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, all the way down, and what sort of flaws are allowable for each grade point. And maybe for it to become less subjective and more objective, they need to amend these standards and make them more detailed and add more description, add more quantifiable numbers or amounts to how many flaws can exist on a card within a certain criteria of that card to make it into a certain grade or into a certain slab, let's say a certain flip in the slab, a certain grade point. I'm not sure. Maybe they just need to tighten up their standards and make them become more transparent. I had a heck of a time on Beckett's website the other day finding out what is a 10, what is a 9, what is an 8. I couldn't find it. So PSA's website, I could find it. I'd really like to see Beckett put that information front and center so that we can all understand that. And it's, I wonder why it isn't front and center. Is it because it is so subjective and they just haven't gotten around to it yet? But across the board, I think they need to tighten up these standards, make them be transparent with them, as PSA already is with theirs. And I can't speak to SGCs. I'm just not familiar with how they are in terms of their putting the standards out there. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them out there, and I'd like to see them tightened up. I think that could help. You're never going to get perfection in this because they are still human. But the other thing I'll say about grading, and you see it all the time on Facebook groups, someone will post up a card and they'll say, it's graded. And they'll say, this got a 4. What do you think? And then people will chime in from all over the world without holding the card in hand. And they'll say, oh, you got ripped off. Oh, that's a 6 at least. Oh, that's like, don't ever ask me to grade your card without putting it in my hand to see. You can't see a card on a screen. You can't, even PWCC has their super enhanced images. You still can't change the angle and bounce light off it at different angles. So, and you need to be able to do that to truly grade a card. You cannot grade a card from looking at a scan on your computer screen in a Facebook group. People do that. It always kind of irks me, but hey, that's fine. You're getting an opinion. Point. But when everybody chimes in and says, "Oh, that's an 8 for sure," it's like Really? Like
Ask them what grading company they work for.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What grading company do you work for? And what magnification did you use to make that assessment? Because if you're not using 30 times magnification at least, you can't grade a card. So anyway, just one of my pet peeves in the hobby is that one right there. Joe says one of the best parts of the hobby is sharing perspectives, and that's the beauty of hobby content right now, and the explosion of hobby content, which we had on our agenda to talk about tonight, John. And learning more about your hobby content footprint. So before we kind of segue to that, there's only a few more comments we're going to have a quick look at here. Beans Ballcard says we should be able to call out bad graders like we do bad umpires or referee. Well, we do call them out, but who's listening, right? Just the people that are following.
I don't know. Does Ken want like each card, you get your underwear and it said inspected by Inspector 12. Does he want like the cards? This was inspected by Jim. You know what I mean? So when Jim screws up, we can like go on social media and say, "Bad job, Jim. My Luca should have been a 9.5, and you gave it a 9." Well, but you know what? You got to stand behind your work. I mean, I'm joking about it, but it is a point. I mean, it has some merit. I don't think you're never going to see that. I don't think the companies are going to put their employees out there like that, and I don't know if they want to be.
Well, John, he goes on to say right here, no, the individual graders, not the grading company. I think if they did that, you wouldn't find any graders. The grading would end because no one's going to do it because they know that it's a I forget the term, but it's a position that just gets no love, right? It only gets hate. So no one's gonna do that, and I don't think they need to do that, but I'd like to see some more consistency. Obviously, we all do. Okay, let's keep going because that's we're just stating the obvious at that point. Paul lets me know that the hockey game's gone to double overtime. All right, Dallas doesn't want to go out easy, that's for sure. So good for them for putting up a fight. Card Killer says, does anyone else see the grade past gem mint a gimmick? So I think we're talking about the black label, so the pristine black label in Beckett, and we're talking about the new SGC 10 gold, I believe, which is like, a special 10, just like Beckett's black label. Yeah. Do you see it as a gimmick? Do you see that as a gimmick, John?
I think it becomes a gimmick when that card is holdered as such, and you can see that it's not. And that's the risk these companies have now taken by going up to that, that level, is you better be sure that no one can even look in that card in a scan and say, man, look at that edge. It's got some fray. How is that a pristine? I can see that from my living room. I think that's what is the risk of making it a gimmick. I don't think it's a gimmick if it's not used too freely. Hey, this is a gem, the Oprah phenomenon. You get a 10, you get a 10, you get a gem mint, right? If it's really reserved for cards that, go through 2 or 3 graders and like I don't see anything wrong with this card. Jeremy, you look, you find anything? You don't. Yeah, man, you're right. This thing is sweet. Let's ask Mike. Mike, Jeremy and John have looked at this. What say you? And if it can get through that sort of rigmarole, that sort of, more than one person, where it's very apparent that this card meets all that criteria, then I don't think it's a gimmick. I think the risk of becoming a gimmick is they're given away too freely, and they can be picked apart publicly. Like, no way. Like, there's no way that card, that was a favor done to somebody.
Right. I think you're right, John. I think you're right because, first of all, these pristines and golds, like what they're doing is they're taking the subgrades, and if they're all 10s, they're making it a black label as in a true 10 versus 3 10s and a 9.5, which is really the only other option for a 10. I love when you see people say it's 0.5 away from black label. Well, every BGS 10 is 0.5 away from a black label, but in any event, if each of those subgrades is perfect or within the standards for what a 10 needs to be, then it should be a 10. But if you can look at it with a naked eye and see some fraying on the edges or an imperfect corner or the centering isn't 50-50, then I think, we're being a little bit too loose with them. So, the question was, is it a gimmick? I mean, it's only, like you said, I think you nailed it, John. It's only a gimmick if they're not respecting the perfection of the perfect 10. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Back to talking about, people grading cards on screen. Paul says, I suspect people who comment on those photos also own mint Gretzky rookies, right? Of course they do, because they think they are. I'll on that whole, on the whole action of putting a card out there and people saying, hey, what do you think it'll grade? I can never know. You can never give a perfect opinion, but I don't look down upon or think it's wrong to put it out there and say, guess the grade. Hey, guess the grade on this card. That's kind of fun to do. I don't have any issues with that, but don't be looking for really good opinions online unless you can put the card in somebody's hand. Back to that again. Joe says, old BVG label is fire. They were so hard on the corners. So, again, and this comes back to it's people, right? And you don't have the same staff every single year in any company, never mind grading company. So, and I think standards do change as well. I remember when PSA got a new director of grading. I heard this kind of, hearsay, but it was a female person in the position, and I heard that she made the grading standards a lot tougher way back when. Now, who knows if that's true? But again, it's just to emphasize it. Different staff in these companies will lead to different results. Yeah. Right? Bean says, grading would end. Oh, what a shame. So you're okay with that. Paul says, I wonder about fuzzy edges, if they are like the warts on a dog and are considered correct for the breed at a dog show, which is true for the 1979 O-Pee-Chee Wayne Gretzky rookie. It's considered appropriate for the card. That's a whole other discussion we don't need to get into, but very interesting. And the Lakers are going to the final. Thank you, Paul. I think everybody, I called that. I'm sure most people did. All right, man. That's a good discussion on grading. I think we covered a lot there. Got some good information out there. Thanks everybody for the comments. I'll take a second.
Tools of the trade right here too. I use magnification. And
light.
Yep.
And light. Yeah, I have one of these fancy little loops, a jeweler's loop that I picked up on eBay.
Those work great too.
Yeah, this came from somewhere in Asia to my door under $10. And it works well. The light's burnt out by now. I've had it for years, but it still works. I have to tighten the screws every so often so it doesn't come apart. But it's 40 times magnification, and it works really well. But people don't always know how to use these. I'm just going to show very quickly something to people. If you're going to look at a card under a loop, you got to hold this thing right up to your eye, and you got to get in close. You got to be like that. That's how you got to do it, right? I don't know, John. I'm sure you've done it as well. Okay. Yeah. Let's move along. We're at an hour 38. We're going to wrap up here pretty soon, John. I did tease in my, in talking about having you on that you can shed some light onto football, because you are an expert in football. And so, what are some players that are currently maybe ripe for the picking if you're looking to get in before it's too late on certain, on any athlete? Are there any guys in football that are kind of like, the current state of the market hasn't caught up to them yet?
Yeah, if you would have asked me last week, I would have told you Jonathan Taylor and Herbert, the quarterback from the Chargers, but we're a week too late. As and that's we talk about day trading and how fast this market changes. There's a perfect example. Last week I would have mentioned those two right off the top. And now you can't, because their stuff has already went through that crescendo and still going. You might be able to still get some decent deals with them, but the buzz is full blown now, and people are scooping them all up. I think when you look at positions, you got to be careful with running backs, because their window of playing is a lot shorter. You look at some of these running backs. Le'Veon Bell, right, went from the best running back in the league to he's an afterthought as a Jet. And so you got to be careful. Running backs kind of like they're like a shooting star, right? They get red hot, they're flying across the sky, and then they're out. So I think quarterbacks and receivers are probably where you got to go. And guys I like Cortland Sutton, he's hurt for the year, but I mean, you got to think past this year. You got to think long term. Even CD Lamb, I know he's popular, he plays in Dallas, but some of his stuff is definitely at levels if you believe that he's going to live up to the expectations. Kenny Galladay in Detroit's another receiver that doesn't bring top dollar yet. When you look at where he ranks in the receivers list, is right there. Michael Thomas, arguably the best receiver in the NFL. His cards, when you look at his values, the curse of the Jets. When you look at his values, there's I'm picking up stuff of his like fairly cheap. Like I'm surprised myself. Another guy who's going to be a Hall of Famer, should be first ballot, DeAndre Hopkins, and who's now in Arizona. I mean, the guy just 100-something catches every year, 1,000 yards, touchdowns. He's sort of like the anti-Julio Jones. He actually catches touchdowns. And so receivers is probably where you got to go. Backs, you got to be careful because, for 4 or 5 years, and then they kind of just fizzle out. You got your exceptions, obviously, to the rule, your Emmitt Smiths and guys along those lines that last longer. Nick Chubb is a guy. I don't want to totally exclude running backs. Nick Chubb is a guy that every year he's probably in the top 3 in running backs, and his stuff is very affordable, and it's hard not to look at his stuff. But receivers, the problem with quarterbacks, Jeremy, is they're so hyped even before they ever throw a pass in the NFL, that you're not going to get them at a level where you can say, man, I got these fourth. Now there's exception to the rules. Russell Wilson stuff's exploding now. A year or 2 ago, or even 3 years ago, I mean, you can get them a whole lot cheaper. And so, I think it's because of those phenomenons now that people are just, Trevor Lawrence, who's going to be in next year's draft, his stuff's he's going to be just already through the roof before he even gets to the league and plays. And so I tend to look at the receivers because sometimes it takes them a year or 2. Calvin Ridley was a guy, me personally, I bought a ton of Calvin Ridley, and we're seeing this year that really that hunch, if you call it, or that gut feeling really pay dividends. He looks like Julio Jones has obviously played longer, but I think he might be a better player. He is this year, but I think even long term he might have a better career than Julio Jones. And many will tell you Julio Jones is probably going to be a Hall of Famer. And so receivers are a great opportunity in the football market to get stuff at a very low level. And I think what you're going to see, with Jerry Rice's rookie, we talked about this the other day too, for a long time was $20-$30. Arguably not just the greatest receiver in the game, but arguably the greatest football player to play the game. And think about his rookie being $20-$30. That has changed now. It's went up. And I think you're seeing like guys who, Jerry Rice's numbers will probably never be surpassed, but you're seeing guys like Hopkins, Michael Thomas that may, when everything's said and done, be in the discussion. You're going to see them, because of Rice's stuff going up, they're going to follow sort of that trajectory. And so, but there's still, right now is the time, quite frankly. Another tip, is I hate to say, you don't want players or athletes to get hurt, but it's part of football. It's part of any sport, but especially football. It's a great opportunity to buy cards. Cortland Sutton's out for the year, but Cortland Sutton's going to come back and play. Michael Thomas is out for a few weeks. His cards have sort of dipped, but he's going to come back and play. It's a great opportunity. Not that you want someone to get hurt, but you're a product of your environment. It's a great opportunity when people sort of forgot about them, at least temporarily, to kind of go in there and scoop them up.
Cool, man. No, it's great. And, I don't follow football closely, so a lot of the names you just said are right over my head. But names I do recognize are, Jerry Rice, of course. And when I think of Jerry Rice, he's the last great receiver that I can think of that really, his cards are highly respected. I wonder about guys like Randy Moss and Terrell Owens, and these guys who are also top end receivers in their day. Seems like sometimes off the field exploits might have an impact on hobby love. After Jerry Rice, like, is there opportunity in these guys, in a Randy Moss and a Terrell Owens, guys who are, Hall of Fame caliber players that had great careers as far as receivers go?
It's funny. It's a great point too. Great question. I think Moss and Owens are sort of always kind of compared to each other because they played at the same time. Rice played, but he was on the back end of his career and kind of on his way out of football. And the difference, Moss sort of had off the field problems in college, and then got to the NFL and kind of cleaned up his act. Owens didn't really have issues in college. He came to the NFL and became a diva and threw his own quarterbacks under the bus and doing goofy stuff in his driveway and working out. He's just, what he did off the field kind of like overwent what he did on it. No one can argue with his numbers. It's why he didn't get it. Quite frankly, he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he wasn't. And it was because of the off the field stuff. Dan Fouts, who's a voter and a Hall of Famer himself, said he didn't vote for. And he took criticism for this, but he admitted he didn't vote for Terrell Owens because of the off the field stuff. And so I think that's hurt him. I think if you're comparing the two, I think probably Moss has the biggest upside card wise because he doesn't sort of have that black cloud over him as much as Owens does. I mean, the worst thing you can really say about Randy Moss is he wanted the ball all the time. But what receiver? But he wasn't shy about saying it. And
reminds me of Michael Jordan, right? Wants the ball all the time, right? Yep. And great players want the ball. So I don't really fault them for that unless it's to the detriment of the team. As far as running backs go, I think of Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith. I mean, these guys kind of defied the odds. They had long careers or, longer careers than most running backs do. If you were to have to, and this is me asking you for sort of, let's say, advice, who's the next great running back in that lineup? And for a while, you thought it was LaDainian Tomlinson. Then you thought it was, who's the guy that started out in Minnesota there?
Adrian Peterson.
Who's the guy right now that has the best chance of following the Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, being in that conversation? In your opinion?
I love Saquon Barkley.
Okay, so that's it. That's it. That's all I want to know is who. Saquon Barkley. That's the guy who you think is the best chance of getting into that conversation?
I do, but he's got to stay healthy. He's been injured twice now. The team he plays for, their O-line is killing him. So I don't know if it's going to be – I think he almost has to get off the Giants for that to happen. But the talent's there. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. But now he's been hurt twice. And so the bloom is a little bit off that rose, Jeremy, but he's still young. I mean, you're talking about he's second or third year player. So the thing that really makes their career short is all the wear and tear on the tires. With him being hurt a couple of times, he doesn't have as much of that wear and tear. So and still young. So I'll stick with that, but I'm a little less confident today than I was last year.
I'm just glad I got a name out of you, man. I'm going to watch that now. I'm not going to go buy cards. I'm just, I'm going to keep it in mind. It'll be a fun thing to look forward to. Okay, we're going to get some comments and we're going to get to the Sports Cards Live 5 card of the day, and then we're going to wrap it up. Going back, Charles wants to say the grading from an investment standpoint with the right companies, of course, is great. However, from a collector's standpoint, I think raw cards are 10 times cooler. And again, we're all entitled to how we approach and what we like. And Charles is making his way in the hobby, and I totally respect that position, 100%. Peter wants to know, what is that magnifying headset that John has? I don't know what it is, John, but can you shout out what that is that you got there?
Yeah, I took my regular glasses off, and I'll put these things on. So they're glasses. I have like 6 sets of lenses. They come down, and they're different magnifications, like you said, and it has a light. I'm not going to put it on and like shine it right at people.
What's it called? Is there a name or something we can Google?
I don't know. I got it from Amazon, to be honest with you. Very, very affordable. I think it was like, I have Prime shipping. I think it was $14. And I tell you what, this thing, sometimes I don't like these glasses because I see things I don't want to.
Yeah, fair. Okay, let's keep rolling because we are running out of time here. Troy says, great set of talkers today. Sorry I'm late to the show. Troy, welcome to the show. Card Hobbyist says the market volatility is wild these days. Yes, it is. Charles says it's for grading and looking for scratches. Oh, thank you, Charles. Eric Stefano, welcome to the show. Better late than never, my man. Thank you for joining us. Raiders look good. Great. Yeah, I heard that myself, actually. And nice to see them win their first game at home in the new stadium. That's pretty cool. Yamwak says the NTRPAs of wide receivers are lagging. Silver prisms. Sometimes. Don't be afraid to look for NTs of your favorites. The new investors are falling for the shiny stuff first. Troy says it's so risky for current young NFL. You can't send them in for grading as a million changes injuries happen before the cards get back. That's the story with grading for everything right now. You just never know what's going to happen. Yam says Michael Thompson, Julio Jones both have shots at Jerry Rice's records if health allows. Well, that's a big deal. Troy makes fun of me, says he saw my eyes glossing over during that NFL talk. Well, I didn't know who all the names were, but I was listening intently. Eric says, yeah, I saw Moss play against Montana when he was with Marshall. Great player. Thanks for clarifying, Adrian Peterson. That's who I was thinking of. Walter Payton started 170 consecutive games. Incredible durability, 100%. Almost impossible durability these days. And that must be my brother from another mother, the mayor of Canada, Rich Barone from Long Island, New York. Rich, welcome as always, my man. Okay, John, we got to move along. We're going to get to the Sports Cards Live 5. It's a new thing I've been doing for the past 3 or 4 shows. I got 5 standard questions that I'm asking. Richie's a big Jets fan, if you can't tell. Jets. And I hear they're no good this year, so sorry for that, Richie, but hopefully they get better for you. Okay, John, the first question, the sports card, if you're ready for it, question 1 of the Sports Cards Live 5 is, do you have a favorite card in your personal collection that you can show?
I do, and I have it right here. I'm kind of surrounded by cards. I'll preface this card, Jeremy, by saying it's not my most expensive card. It's not a cheap card either, but if we're ranking them in value, this would not be number 1. But it's near and dear to my heart. There's a whole huge story with it. We'll save that for another day, maybe. But it's a Jackie Robinson. It's out of Flawless. Let me get it closer. I'll cover up my ugly mug too, which is double win for people. It's 1 of 1 Jackie Robinson, and it might be a little hard to see with glare, but it's a patch, and the blue. It's got blue and the flannel like tan yellow, and I believe the blue is actually from the Dodgers script on the jersey. When you see a lot of these Jackie Robinson jersey cards, which you don't see a lot, but when you see them, they traditionally have that old gray flannel, plain single color swatch. And so when I saw this and saw the patch on it, I said, I don't know if we're gonna, when I'll see another one like that again. And Jackie, being from Brooklyn, is my idol. Every book report or essay or speech I had to do when I was in school was Jackie Robinson, to the point teacher said, that's enough, John. You're going to have to pick another person, please. So when I saw this and the patch, it sits on my desk. I got sort of a Jackie Robinson corner over here with a Sports Impressions figurine, another patch card, and something I think of, look at every day. And then when you think about, even what he meant, society-wise, even when his career was done, he probably made more of an impact, quite frankly, off the field than on it. And we could all take what's going on in the world, probably could take a page from his book more now than ever before.
And you know what? I mean, I completely agree with that. But I think my card of the day or card of the show is always tied into my guest. And so I'm going to show a card, but I'm going to show 2 cards. And the second card I'm going to show is also somebody who everybody could take a page out of their book as well. You know what I'm talking about. We'll keep the suspense. What is the question number 2, John? What is the basically what's the card what's your biggest want? But by your biggest want in terms of the hobby, your actual biggest not a Honus Wagner type of thing. What's your number one priority attainable want card right now?
Oh man, I really would love to get it's not cheap, which is probably why it's on my list to get, but an Emmitt Smith, the Score Supplemental Rookie in a 10 would be nice. If anyone that knows that card, it's got the dark borders, and so it's hard to find, very easy to chip. There are 10s out there, obviously they exist. They're not super, super rare, but I better hurry because each year that seems to be going a little bit up. So I talk about it, and I got to stop talking about it because then that's all I'll be able to do is talk about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. What's question number 3, your favorite place to buy cards?
It's got to be, I'm here in Syracuse, and when I had my store back here in the 90s, there was a good 13 of us, me and 12 other stores, and now there's one. And I know the gentleman. We're not particularly friendly with each other, and so most of my purchases, I know it's the boring answer, but most of my purchases will either come online or shows that I can get to.
That's fair, man. And the 4th question: if you could change one thing about the hobby, what would it be?
That's an easy one to me. I just spoke to this on the show, so it's right in my wheelhouse. I think all of us need to be more welcoming of new folks coming in. I know the negative connotation, and we want to say flippers and investors and sneakerheads, but we all want, right? I don't care whether you think you're not investing or you don't like that word being used when it comes to cards. But let's be real, right? The cards we have, or when we open packs or boxes or cases of stuff, right? We want to get the best card we can, right? That's what we're looking to get. We want to get the most valuable card. Well, with people coming in and transactions happening, that has made these values either maintain or what we saw here in 2020 rise. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be very unwelcoming and then want your cards to be worth something. They kind of go hand in hand. And so to answer your question, to kind of come full circle here, I think we need, you might not have to like everybody but we need to welcome and embrace a little bit and try to help folks legitimately when asked, give the best advice we can, and what someone does with it is their business. But I think we need, when I came in as a 7-year-old, I'm sure same with you, people welcomed me. When I started, got my tax number at 15 years old, I was the youngest dealer on the floor. And the older guys were, very nice to me and helped me out. I think we've lost some of that from those days, and I'd like to see that come back.
Okay, good answer. Good answer. Before we get on to the last question, so Eric completely agrees with you. Eric also wants to say sorry for being late. That's okay, Eric. You can't set your life around Sports Cards Live, but I'd love it if you would, but I understand that you can't do that. He also says to John, great job on the last pod with your pops. We'll let everybody know. Check out John's podcast. It is called Sports Card Nation. You can find it on all the podcast platforms. He dropped an episode yesterday. It was episode number 82?
95.
Sorry, 95. Episode 95. And he interviewed his father. I listened to it. It was really interesting, really entertaining. So give that a listen to for sure. Eric says, sweet Jackie card. Charles says, vintage patches are awesome. Saw a Dave the Hammer Schultz patch with blood on it the other day. That's very cool. We now know that Dallas won. There will be another hockey game. Dallas won in overtime. Dallas wins. Awesome. Thank you for letting me know. I definitely wouldn't have won my daily fantasy den today. Question number 5, John. What is your biggest hobby purchase or sale regret that comes to mind?
All right, so I'm going to go back to my store days again.
You got to go quick, John. You got to go quick on this one.
Okay. So back in 92, when I started my store, to 96, I'm here in New York State. Derek Jeter, a lot of Yankee fans here. Derek Jeter, super popular. That 93 SP Jeter is a huge card. Well, I had from a 2-year span, I had about 150 of them. Not all at once, but I would acquire them, get them, open SP, and have them. I sold all 150 of them, ranging from a price from $20 to probably $50. We know what they go for now, and I don't have a single one in my inventory anymore. So from a selfish point of view, that's probably a huge regret that I just thought he was overrated. I thought being he was a Yankee, I didn't think he was that great. And here we are, first ballot Hall of Famer. So much for, see, I don't know everything.
Yeah. First ballot Hall of Famer with all but one vote, I believe. So yeah, pretty cool. Richie says, let's go Yankees. Troy says, hot potato, John, hot potato, LOL, which, it's true, right? If you treat every card that way, you're going to be ahead at the end of the day, I would think. 3B's Collection says, I've noticed a difference from when I was in back in the early to mid 90s. Yeah, a lot has changed for sure. Okay, before we do my card of the day, guys, because we are going to wrap up. So I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. Thank you, John, for joining. You've been an amazing guest. Been a lot of fun. Tons of great insight, John. Thanks to all the viewers. We've had great interaction tonight. As always, I got to say, you guys are always awesome. So thank you so much for that. If you're new, please do subscribe to the channel. Even if you're never going to come back and watch it again, I guess. No, I want good subscribers, but subscribe anyway. Come back and watch another episode. This is episode 49. There's 48 other episodes in the archives, along with about 4 or 5 after hours shows, which is a second show that I do after this one. We will be going live in 28 minutes with after hours. My guest will be Colin Murray. So check that out. It's a much more relaxed show. Just I sit back and I chill versus producing an on-the-fly kind of interview show like this. So hang out with us if you want a little bit later. It'll be fun. And yeah, again, please subscribe if you haven't yet. I do appreciate it. Hit the thumbs up, leave a comment, all that stuff you want to do. Appreciate these comments, SCA. Great show. Keep it up. Thank you. I will. Thank you so much. And it's comments like that make me want to keep this going. I'm sure John can attest to that, right? You get people that like what you're putting out. You want to keep doing it. Thank you, 3B. I appreciate that comment right there that you enjoyed it. Thumbs up right back at you and everybody else out there. Eric says, thanks for the show. See you in after hours. Yeah, we'll be in after hours in 27 minutes. And Richie says, you don't know how to chill. You don't know how to chill. Well, Richie knows me from the card shows too, right? Carlos says, great show, guys. Thanks for the insight. John, thank you, Carlos. Check out Carlos's YouTube channel at Because I'm Carlos. Yam says, fun conversations, guys. Thank you, Yam. Okay, card of the day, guys. This is one of the better cards in my collection. It seems like it's the second week in a row that I've said that. But when I talked to John last night and I listened to his podcast with his pops yesterday, I realized that, you know what? I mean, his favorite player is Jackie Robinson. I have a Jackie Robinson card that I'm very proud of. I've owned it for 7 or 8 years now. And so I'm going to show it. And it's a great card. It's done wonderful things in the last few months here. But this is my 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson rookie. It's in a PSA 6 holder, which is X to mint. And it's a card that, I mean, I'll be honest, I picked it up for a fraction of what it's worth today, less than 10% of what it sells for now, probably 5% of what it sells for now. So it's a card I've had for a long time. It's in my collection. John asked me earlier, because I gave him a sneak peek.
I'm trying to get it.
Well, yeah, here you go. Here, John. So John said to me earlier, he said, now that you've seen what this card has done, are you tempted to sell it? And my instant answer is no. Like, there's no way I'm selling this card. This is a lifetime holding for me. It's something that I love. So I teased earlier that, we should all take a page out of this guy's book. Well, there's another baseball player. So I pulled out 2 cards because on the show that John did with his pops, they mentioned this guy too. The player's name is Pee Wee Reese. And the reason why I want to pair these cards up is because if you saw the movie 42, which chronicles Jackie Robinson's life, there's a scene in the movie where they're in the outfield. They're at an away game. They're in the outfield, and Jackie Robinson is being heckled by the people in the stands for racial slurs at this guy right here. And this guy right here notices this going on. And what does he do? He walks over to Jackie Robinson in the middle of the field, puts his arm around his shoulders, and stands there and looks up at the crowd, basically saying, hey, this guy's on our team. He's a guy just like us. We're going to respect that. And he sent a message to the crowd. And that was my biggest takeaway in that whole film was Pee Wee Reese's behavior and response to the crowd heckling this guy here, Jackie Robinson. So while he's obviously a hero, and it says right on the back of the card, first Negro player in modern organized baseball, debuted in 1947. That's pretty cool. I mean, even the language is so of the times. But this guy right here was a hero in my eyes too, because he basically said, hey, I don't want to use the F word, but he basically flipped off everybody in the stands and said, hey, quit it. This guy is one of us now. So, I'm going to put my arm around him and show you. I love that scene in that movie so much. And these two cards to me are paired up and probably never ever sell them. So wanted to share those. John, as we kind of fade out here, we'll just see the rest of the comments, and then I'll come to you for some parting words, and then we're gonna end the broadcast.
Okay.
So we've got great show from Paul. Thank you so much, Charles. We'll see you after hours. Amish Dave Archer, check out his YouTube channel as well, everybody, by the name Amish Dave Archer. I'll catch you on after hours. We'll have to catch this tomorrow on replay. Sounds good, Dave. We'll see you soon. Eric says, sweet, thank you. Jackie Cuts. Building says, man, if you only hung on to those. Must be talking about your Jeters there. We all have those stories too, right? Yeah. It was second base, not the outfield. Pee Wee put his arm around Jackie. Yes, he did. Actually happened in St. Louis. Well, there's some great context to those two cards. That must be the mayor, Rich Barone, letting us in on that information. Thank you, Rich. All right, everybody, once again, thank you so much for joining tonight. This has been a blast. John, thank you so much for joining me. I know you do a lot of your own content. You do like 4 shows between your YouTube and your podcast. I'm going to put those up right now, everybody. You want to follow John on Instagram at Sports Card Nation Podcast, on Twitter at Sports Card NATI1. You can catch his YouTube shows. Check out Hobby Hotline on YouTube. That'll get you to that show, among others. Finally, Building says, these are always great. Thank you, Building. Bobby Burrell says, wonderful show, guys. I enjoyed listening to John. Well, that's what I want to hear. I love when you guys enjoy the guests that I'm bringing to you. So thanks, everybody. We will be on After Hours, going live there in 22 minutes. John, last word is yours, my man.
Well, I want to first off thank you for the wonderful comments. Thank you, Jeremy, for having me on it. You mentioned being a blast. I couldn't have said it better myself. This was a blast. The 2 hours went by like holy smokes. It just like a blur, and I could go another 2, but we're doing 4 shows. How I'm still married 21 years. I'm going to write a book there. I don't know how many copies I'll sell, but this show's great. The people that listen and watch and interact, that's what we do it for. You know that. I know that. It makes what we do worthwhile, and it's fun. And this was a fun 2 hours, and I'd love to someday do it again.
For sure, man. Well, hey, I plan to do this for a while, so we'll get you back on. Thank you again for making the time. Everybody else, thank you so much. We're going to hit go live in the After Hours studio in about 20 minutes. We'll see you then. Joining me is Colin Murray, who's a longtime hobbyist, vintage guy. We're going to chill out and just talk some more hobby. So thanks, everybody. Good night. And if you're joining on After Hours, we will see you shortly. And it spins and it spins and it spins.